last night. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. Joining us now, he is the head honcho of the VCDL, Phil Van Cleave. Hey, Phil, great to have you with us.
Hey, John, how you doing?
So, Phil, we're getting this polling that's coming in, and it's showing that women in suburban Virginia want to see some kind of action on guns. And your organization, VCDL, very powerful gun lobby in Virginia, opposes it all. So you've got that going on. But the president sees this. He sees that we need to close the background check loophole, which to me is like a no-brainer, and also to extend red flag laws so people that are posting rape lists on the internet and on social media and kill lists who are obviously mentally crazy can't go in and buy firearms, right? Kind of makes sense to the average people. And here's the other thing, Phil, here's the reality you have to deal with. Right now, you've got moms going to the store, preparing for back to school, buying their fifth graders backpacks with bulletproof vests. Don't you think you have to do something, Phil?
Okay. Well, first of all, no, you don't. We already have tons of gun control in this country, much more than we need, and none of it works. If it did, Chicago, Baltimore, D.C. would be havens of safety, but it doesn't work. And this whole concept of, well, let's do red flag laws to make these moms feel comfortable, it's not going to lower crime. We're going to have the same conversation going. It's not going to lower suicides. The truth is that, gun control just doesn't work, and we cannot keep imposing more and more and more red tape on the law-abiding people. You don't want your car taken away because your neighbor drives drunk, but that's what they do to gun owners. Every time some maniac goes out there and does something wrong, they come after my guns. They make it harder for me to do this, and red flag laws are dangerous. I'll say one thing about the other side. They're really good at packaging something. They can take a pile of manure and put it in the bag and put this really pretty packaging on it so that you think it's wonderful. And that's what they did with red flag laws and universal background checks. If you don't care about the Second Amendment, you might care about the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. If you care about any of those, you're not going to like red flag laws. They don't do anything for the dangerous person. They only go after his guns, which is totally stupid. And I know Mirayes has actually modified his bill a little bit. Most of these red flag laws are going strictly for guns and providing no help.
All right, well, let's take this one by one. Let's start with closing the background check loophole. When people say universal background checks, immediately the gun lobby gets all upset and says, oh, it's going to be gun registration so they can take your guns. Well, there already is gun registration now. If I go to buy a gun, I go to a gun store, guess what? I got to fill out paperwork and I got to go through a background check. So we have background checks, right? We have them. They exist. So if you have a background check, why then can you sidestep it by buying a gun out of the back of somebody's truck after meeting them on eBay with no background check? I mean, if you either you have background checks or you don't, Phil.
Okay. First of all, we don't really need background checks. As far as I'm concerned, if they went away, we'd be just fine because, in 2010, they prosecuted 44 people in the whole country and only got 13 convictions. That's how powerful the background check system is. Most of the hits are false on it because that person's name matches one of the millions of criminals they have listed in the database. Criminals simply don't go through background checks. Only 6% of the criminals, according to a recent Department of Justice statistics, went through a background check using their own name. They found other ways around it. But you did make a very good point, and you're right. We do have an indirect registration system with the background system we've got now because a background check should simply say, can Philip Van Cleave own a gun? Yes or no? And that should be the decision. But, oh, no, they want to know the make, model, and serial number of the gun I bought. That's got nothing to do with whether I can own a gun. But by having sales where you could do a private person-to-person sale that doesn't go through that system, it prevents the government from knowing what guns you have because it's none of their business what guns I have. And that sort of punches holes in the registration part of that system. And I think something like 0.8% of criminals get their guns at gun shows and things of that nature, which, by the way, dealers at gun shows do background checks. So private sales are not the issue you think it is. And anybody can get around the background check, even if you had universal, which Illinois has. You've seen the crime rate in Chicago, and Maryland has, and you've seen the crime rate in Baltimore. You can get around it by having a third party buy the gun for you, which is what criminals often will do. They'll simply give the guy an extra couple $100. They go in there and buy the gun. He passes the background check. Boom. The background check system did nothing.
So Phil Van Cleave, we're with Phil Van Cleave. Phil Van Cleave is the president of the VCDL, which is the Virginia Citizens Defense League. That is the Virginia gun lobby here. So, Phil, what you're saying is you would rather abolish background checks altogether rather than close a loophole. So not only do you not want to close a loophole, which makes no sense to me, but you want to just abolish it totally. So it's kind of like you have to pay a fare to get on the subway in New York City, right? And so what basically you're saying is, I not only don't want to prosecute turnstile jumpers, I just don't want to charge to get on the subway. So we're going to lose all that revenue. I mean, that's basically what you're saying, right? Is you're calling for the elimination. You're calling for the elimination of any background checks at all. Anybody should just be able to walk into a gun store, go on eBay and buy whatever they want. Is that your position?
Yeah, in the 50s and 60s, that's exactly, well, they didn't have eBay and so forth, but that's exactly, you could order from a magazine, a rifle, have it come straight to your house, handguns, all that stuff. Our crime rate was a tiny fraction of what it is now. As that gun control passed, as things got locked down in the 50s and 60s into the 70s, our crime rate started to soar. Clearly, the background checks coming in didn't help there either.
So
again,
what do you say to the suburban moms, Phil?
You would rather put people through millions through these checks just to catch 44 people and prosecute them.
Yeah, well, that maybe those 44 people saved 1,000 lives. How the hell do you know that, Phil? You have no idea.
They were all mass shooters? I
don't know. Maybe they could have been. But I'll tell you this. So your message to suburban women in Virginia is, hey, forget closing the loophole. We don't want background checks at all. Go buy a gun.
We're not. Yeah,
is that your message?
We're not right now. We don't have any legislation to even do that. But I'm saying when you come to me and say we need universal background checks, all I can do is shake my head. Yeah, Illinois got them. California has them. Every other mass shooting is in California, but they've got universal background checks, and they've had them for a long time. They have red flag laws. Every other mass shooting, seems to be in California. So I'm just saying this stuff doesn't work, and some of it's dangerous to our liberties. In fact, anything that goes after the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. There's a reason they use that very wording, but we've infringed the heck out of it, and every time we infringe it, the crime rate goes up.
So let's get to Jason Mirayes' red flag bill. He's also, by the way, has a bill for, and it's not universal background checks, it's closing the loophole. See, this is what this argument is maddening to me, right? We have a background check and there's a loophole. So in a way, Phil, I agree with you. At least you're logical, because what you're saying is, no, don't close the loophole because I don't want background checks at all. At least I have to grant you that's at least a logical argument. I'll give you that. It's logical. The people who are saying, well, we need the background checks, but we need the loophole because I might give my a gun to my son, is like about the stupidest argument out there. So at least, Phil, you're consistent. I'll give you that. Let's get to red flag laws. Here's what Jason Mirayes, conservative Republican Virginia Beach, is proposing, right? A red flag law means that if somebody suspects that you're nuts, right? There's due process. You get 14 days. They can confiscate your weapon or stop you from buying one in the short term, but you have to go in front of a judge and they have to sign it. Both sides have to present evidence. Phil, this is no different than if somebody gets a restraining order against an ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, ex-husband, or ex-business partner. They get a restraining order because they're in fear, right? They can get it for 5 or 6 days or 7 days. Eventually, within 2 weeks, they got to go in front of a judge, and everybody has to present it, and the judge either signs it or not, right? You believe in our judicial system. So why wouldn't you be in favor of Jason's law, which is due process, which says that if you're certifiably crazy, you can't or should not have a firearm? Why is that an infringement?
By the way, he doesn't want to call his a red flag law, and the reason is he doesn't want it mashed into the garbage, the really bad stuff that the Democrats are putting out, which basically, again, snatches away the guns but leaves the dangerous person alone to kill himself or kill others. And it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and people are fawning all over this. Totally idiotic. His version, at least, is aimed in the right direction. Mm-hmm. At least, if the person has mental health problems, then he's taken in and given due process. But he is taken into custody and brought in and given due process at that point in front of a judge, and then may end up going for being evaluated for 72 hours for mental health treatment. But we've already got a temporary detention order system. Why do we need this? We've already got TDOs. A police officer, if he has probable cause to believe you're out of your mind, can have a judge order you to be taken into custody for 72 hours. You don't lose your guns, you don't lose your rights. You're merely being evaluated to see indeed if you do have mental problems, or if you're a diabetic who's low on sugar and is just acting bizarre because of that. Whatever it is, that system's there. So why are we doing it again? And this time, again, he doesn't want to call it red flag law, and I can see that because, again, at least he's getting the person some treatment. But again, I repeat, TDOs already do that. So
are you in
why
favor?
Do we need this? Are
you open to at least evaluating Jason Mirayes' bill?
We're willing to look at something like that. Yes, if you're not going to do something about the dangerous person, don't even talk to us. We've got no interest in that. That's about gun confiscation. Mm-hmm. He at least is going to try to get that person help. That is a step. That's a step. But again, it's a TDO. But yeah, we're willing to look at his stuff. Sure.
Okay, so Jason Mirayes has called for the speaker to call for a one-day weekend special session in order to consider his bill, because I think what Republicans here, Phil, are responding to is every poll is showing that swing voters in Virginia want some kind of action. They want to do something logical. Mirayes' bill seems logical, even to Phil Van Cleave. Why not go ahead, get that special session, let Mirayes go forward with his bill and see what happens and kind of get out of the way? Because let me tell you the reality of this, Phil Van Cleave. If you guys don't do something right now, every poll that I'm seeing, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose the Senate, Phil, and you're going to lose the House of Delegates. Phil Van Cleave, and then what are you going to do? Then you're going to be fighting bills by Mark Levine in Northern Virginia, which are going to make half of Virginia a felon for buying a certain type of gun. What are you going to do then?
All right, look, first of all, on the Mirayes bill, again, the bill as it's written now is not ready for prime time. It just isn't. There has got to be a ton of protections in there so that what they're finding in Maryland and other places is like a third of these red flags are all being done out of vengeance, one person against another, and that can cost you thousands of dollars, cost you possibly up to years without your firearms and all that, and you've done nothing wrong except be accused and get caught up in the system. And by the way, poor people don't get a lawyer to help them in court to try to prove that they're not dangerous and get their rights back, their guns back. So Mirayes' bill, has got some good stuff in it, but it's not ready for prime time. It can still be, you can still be abused under it. He has put some protections in there, but there's not nearly enough. We just, look, our Constitution, our form of government's geared around, our justice system's geared around that we would rather see three bad guys go off that should have gone to jail but get off because of the legal system, rather than have one innocent person put in prison. That's why we've got the legal system we do now, and it's the same sort of thing here. We don't want the innocent who've done nothing wrong caught up in this system. So his bill's not ready for prime time at all. But at least he's not the hypocrite that the other side is. He is really trying to do something for the people. The other side doesn't care. They want the guns.
So is it fair to say after this conversation that Phil Van Cleave, VCDL, is open to evaluating Jason Mirayes' bill? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, assuming he's making some changes to it.
Evaluating, right? Evaluating.
We just have some concerns. If he can cover those, then yes.
So you're open to evaluating it and making it better.
We're willing to look at. Yes, we're willing to talk to him again. If it can't get over the finish line, then we just won't be able to back it. And
now we're getting somewhere, Phil. Phil, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so they want your input. Jason wants your input. You guys should get together and make this bill such that you're comfortable and your organization is comfortable with it, and that it's something that Republicans are able to say, look, we're concerned about this issue. It's not business as usual. And, my problem with this whole thing with the NRA has been we're fighting a 2020 war with 1990 talking points, basically, and they're not working. And I live, Phil, in the real world, okay? And I'm looking at Republican political Armageddon in 71 days if you guys don't do something. And if you get that, you can forget about Jason's bill. You're going to be fighting gun confiscation in Virginia, and you simply don't have the people to do anything about it because they're going to pass it and Governor Jones is going to sign it, and that's it. And then you're going to be fighting to overturn that for years.
Wrong, they're going to lose the rest of their base. Gun owners will walk away. They're tired of this.
No, not if you get behind him and you tell him, look, we got to do something. We got to have a compromise here. You got to come out, back this compromise, back the Republicans, because the alternative is they're going to make you a felon for owning certain firearms. That's what Mark Levine is going to do, Phil. I'm telling you, I'm ringing the bell. Yeah. You guys got to do something.
But compromise always involves gun owners giving up something and not getting a darn thing from the other side.
That's because we're losing, Phil. Phil, we're losing.
We're tired of it.
Well, we're losing, Phil. I mean, we're losing.
Well, the Constitution's there. We'll just have to fight whatever battle with whoever's in office. I mean, when I first got in, it was all Democrats except for the governor. So, and we got a lot done.
This is not the same Democrats, Phil.
Democrats, I'm not saying there isn't. But
Phil Van Cleave, you and I grew up in a different time, okay? These are not the Democrats that we knew. These people are certifiably nuts, Phil. You've got a communist that is going to be a committee chairman out of Manassas, Lee Carter, who just put on Twitter that he wants to join Antifa. You're going to have a committee chairman who is an Antifa member. This is not the Democratic Party, Phil, that you and I knew.
Are going to elect somebody.
All right, I got to go.
Maybe they deserve who they get. I mean, if they're going to run away
Phil.
From electing good people because of this issue,
Phil, I got to go.
I don't believe it in the first place. I don't believe it's going to happen.
All right, I got to go. Look, great discussion. Thank you for coming on. We made progress, Phil. That's a good thing. Thank you, as always, for being on. Phil, we're getting somewhere.